Victor Lorn was a name known all over the world. People didn't just call him a pianist, they called him a genius, a legend. A man who didn't just play the piano but spoke through it. His concerts were always full, his fans waited outside for hours just to catch a glimpse of him, and other musicians both feared and respected him. He was serious, strict, and didn't like jokes. He didn't believe in distractions, and definitely didn't believe in mixing music with anything he called entertainment nonsense. He wore black suits, spoke very little, and never smiled during interviews. But he was respected because when he sat at the piano, everything around him became quiet. The music was so beautiful that people cried. Ronda Rousey, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. She was loud, funny, strong, and not afraid to speak her mind. She'd been a champion in MMA, a judo Olympian, and a famous figure all over sports and entertainment. People admired her for being tough but real. She never pretended to be perfect. If she was angry, she showed it. If she lost, she came back stronger. And when she entered WWE, her fan base grew even bigger. But there was one thing most people didn't know about Herbie. In all the strength there was also pain. She carried the memory of her father, who died when she was young. She rarely talked about it, but that pain shaped her into the fighter. The two of them, Victor and Ronda, were never supposed to meet. Their worlds were too different. But everything changed one night at a charity gala in Los Angeles. The ballroom was filled with important people. Celebrities, CEOs, politicians, artists. Everyone dressed in fancy clothes, sipping expensive wine, smiling politely, and talking about things they barely cared about. Victor was there as a guest of honor. He had donated millions to a music education foundation, and that night, he was supposed to give a short speech and play one piece on the grand piano in the center of the stage. Everyone was excited to hear him. He was like a mystery. Nobody ever saw him at parties. Ronda was also invited as a special guest. She didn't like these kinds of events, but she came because the charity was helping kids, and that meant something. To her, she wore a black dress, nothing too flashy, but still powerful. People stared when she walked in. Some admired her, some whispered, "Why is a fighter at a music gala?" Later that evening, after Victor played his piece and received a standing ovation, the guests started mingling around the ballroom again. Ronda ended up near the snack table, laughing with a few fans and cracking jokes. One of the guests nearby mentioned Victor and his godlike playing. "He's amazing," Ronda admitted, nodding. "But I could never do that. My fingers are made for choking people, not pressing keys." Someone laughed and said, "You think you could even sit at the piano without breaking it?" Another person joked, "I bet Victor would faint if you touched his Steinway." Ronda smirked and said, half-jokingly, "Who knows? Maybe I'll challenge him one day. Knock out Beethoven if he comes back to life." The laughter grew louder. People were enjoying the idea of Ronda Rousey, the fighter, trying to play the piano. But behind them, Victor Lorn had heard every word. He stood still, watching her from the corner. His face didn't change, but something sparked in his eyes, maybe curiosity, or maybe annoyance. He walked over slowly. Everyone quieted. Down as he approached. Ow. Ronda turned and saw him. She stood up straighter, a bit surprised, but kept a confident smile on her face. "I heard you wish to knock out Beethoven," Victor said coldly. Ronda chuckled. "Just a joke, no disrespect." Victor looked at her for a few seconds. Then, "Prove it. What do you mean?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I invite you to my studio," he said. "Tomorrow, noon, I will give you a piano. You will play." Everyone gasped. Victor had never invited anyone to his private studio before. It was his temple, his most sacred space. The idea that he would allow someone like Ronda Rousey, a fighter, to touch his instruments was unbelievable. Ronda laughed. "Are you serious?" "Completely," he said. "You say it was a joke, then come and show me what respect for music looks like? Or were you just trying to entertain your fans?" The air became tense. People looked at Ronda, waiting for her answer. She hated being dared. Even more, she hated being looked down on. She stepped forward and nodded. "All right, maestro, I'll see you tomorrow." The next day came faster than she expected. Her manager tried to convince her not to go. Her friends told her it wasn't worth it. He's just trying to make fun of you, they said. Wants to embarrass you. But Ronda didn't care. If anything, she was more curious than nervous. She wanted to see what this famous pianist was like behind the scenes. And deep inside, though she didn't tell anyone, she wasn't completely unfamiliar with pianos. Her father used to play. He taught her a few things when she was a little girl, but she hadn't touched a piano in years. She barely remembered anything, and honestly, she didn't expect this visit to be anything more than a weird memory, too. Laugh about later. She arrived at Victor's studio wearing jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers. No makeup, no camera crew, no fans. Just her and a quiet curiosity. The building looked more like an old mansion than a music studio. Big iron gates, tall trees, and a silence that felt almost too heavy. Inside, the walls were covered in music. History-old paintings of composers, dusty books, and shelves full of vinyl records and sheet music. But the heart of the place was the piano room. It was breathtaking. A giant black Steinway stood in the middle of the polished wooden floor. Sunlight came in through tall windows, and the walls were shaped to create perfect sound. It didn't feel like a normal room. It felt like a place where time stopped. Victor was already there, sitting in a chair with his arms crossed. A few assistants stood near the door, watching closely. One of them had a hidden camera. "Welcome," Victor said. Ronda walked in and looked around. "Nice place. Looks like a museum." "It is not for decoration. It is for truth," he replied sharply. "Come." He gestured to the piano bench. She walked over and sat down, slowly running her hand across the smooth surface. "I assume you know nothing," Victor said. "Not much," she replied honestly. "Just a few things my dad showed me a long time ago. I will teach you the basics. Then you will play." He handed her a simple sheet of music Chopin, easy version. "You have 10 minutes. "Wow, generous," she said sarcastically. Victor gave no smile. He showed her where to place her fingers, how to sit, and how to press the keys gently. Ronda listened carefully, her brain trying to keep up with all the new movements. Her hands, trained for power and speed, now had to slow down, stretch, and relax. She messed up several times, played the wrong notes, got frustrated. Victor didn't hide his disappointment. He sighed loudly, made sharp comments, and paced back and forth. "You are using strength. That is your problem," he said. "Music is not about muscle. It is about surrender." "Surrender's not really my thing," she muttered, but she didn't quit. She tried again and again. Her fingers started to remember shapes, her ears picked up patterns, her body began to calm. After a while, she stopped looking at the paper and just played what she felt. It wasn't perfect, but it was something real. Victor noticed. His face didn't show it, but inside something had changed. The session ended with silence. No claps, no cheers, just quiet. Victor finally spoke. "We begin tomorrow, same time." Ronda blinked. "Wait, what? You're not done, not yet." She stood up, confused but curious. "Are you serious?" "I never joke," he said, "especially not with music." She didn't understand why he wanted her back, but something about his tone made her say yes. As she left the studio, she realized something strange. For the first time in years, she was nervous not for a fight, not for a match, but for a piano. And that was only the beginning. The next morning, Ronda Rousey stood outside Victor Lauren's studio once again. She wore the same hoodie and jeans from yesterday, her hair tied back, no makeup, just a focused face. But something was different today. She wasn't coming in as a joke or a guest anymore. She was walking into that piano room like she was entering a training cage. She didn't know why exactly, but something in her gut told her this wasn't just about music anymore. Something was happening, and she was right in the middle of it. Victor Lauren was already inside. He was sitting in the same chair, arms crossed, with the same cold look on his face. The assistants were there again, standing like statues. The camera light blinked quietly, recording everything. Victor said nothing as she walked in. He just pointed at the piano bench. Ronda sat down. She didn't try to speak either. She simply looked at the piano. She could feel it calling her again, just like yesterday. But now her hands were slightly shaking, not from fear, but from pressure. Pressure to not be a joke. Pressure to prove something not to Victor, but maybe to herself. Victor began the lesson in his sharp, commanding voice. He didn't waste time with greetings or small talk. Today, you will learn scales, finger exercises, discipline, he said. You will forget who you are outside this room. You are not a fighter here. You are a student. Ronda listened carefully. Every word sounded like a challenge. He showed her the basic scales: C major, G major, A minor. He explained how fingers must flow like water, how every note should have its own breath. Then he made her repeat, over and over. For 1 full hour, Ronda's fingers ached. Her back began to hurt from sitting so straight. Brain felt overloaded, but she didn't complain. She focused, breathed deep, and kept going. Victor walked behind her, watching her every move. When she hit a wrong note, he corrected her sharply. Not like that again. Her hands stiffened. He tapped her fingers. Relax. You play like you punch. That's not music. Sometimes when she played something right, Evan, just one phrase, he nodded slowly. Quiet approval. It meant more than any applause. Between exercises, Victor gave short lectures. Spoke about music like it was a living thing. Piano is not about noise. It is about silence and what lives between each note, he said. You must feel before you play. Do you understand? Ronda nodded, but truthfully, she wasn't sure. She understood hard work. She understood pain. But feeling through music. That was still new to her. After 2 hours, they took a short break. Ronda stretched her arms, rolled her shoulders, and stood up. Victor remained silent, looking out the window. The assistants whispered among themselves. One of them was surprised at how seriously Ronda was taking it. They had expected her to quit, maybe argue, or even storm out, but she stayed. She listened. She worked harder than anyone they had seen. Victor finally broke the silence. Do you know why I invited you? Here, Ronda shrugged. To prove I'm a fool? He looked at her, not smiling, but something in his eyes softened. I thought so at first. I thought you were all show, but you are not. There is something deeper. I saw it yesterday. In your hands, you have a memory of music. It is faint, but it is there. Ronda stayed quiet. Her throat tightened a little. That memory was her father. She hadn't thought about him in this way for years. You knew music once, Victor continued. What happened? She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said quietly, Life happened. Victor nodded once, slowly. Then let us bring it back. The second half of the lesson began. This time, Victor brought out a new sheet. It was a simplified version of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Not the full piece, just the first few lines. Ronda looked at it, her eyes scanning the notes. She remembered this piece. Her dad had played it sometimes late at night. When the house was quiet, she placed her fingers on the keys and began. Slowly, hesitantly, wrong notes here and there. But she kept going. As the notes floated through the room, something strange happened. The assistants at the back leaned in. One of them whispered, She's actually... Victor said nothing, but his eyes were fixed on Ronda's hands. Ronda wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't even thinking anymore. Her fingers moved with memory. She remembered sitting on her dad's lap, watching him press the keys. With soft fingers, she remembered how the sound made her feel calm, even when the world around her was falling apart. Tears started to form in the corner of her eyes, but she blinked them away. She wasn't here to cry. She was here to play. Victor? Let her finish the section. Then he spoke. You're beginning to understand. That is enough for today. Ronda looked up surprised. That's it? For now? Return tomorrow. As she left, the assistants looked at each other, stunned. One of them whispered, Is she really coming back again? The next day and the day after that, Ronda returned. Every day at noon, she showed up on time, ready to learn. Each lesson grew harder. Victor taught her chords, transitions, dynamics. He pushed her limits. He shouted sometimes. But Ronda never gave up. The fighter in her knew how to deal with pressure. She treated the piano like an opponent, but not to defeat it, to understand it. Victor, too, began to change. His voice softened. Slightly, he gave small words of praise, nothing dramatic, but enough to be noticed. Better, he would say. Or now you listen. He even allowed her to improvise sometimes, something he never did with others. One afternoon, after a full week of practice, Victor brought out a new challenge. "I want you to play something of your own," he said. Ronda looked confused. "Haven't written anything? Doesn't matter. Play what you feel. Don't think. Just play." She hesitated, then sat down and closed her eyes. Her fingers hovered above the keys. For a moment, the room was silent. Everyone waited. Then slowly, she began to play. It wasn't a real song. It wasn't perfect, but it was raw. It had anger, sorrow, and hope. It had rhythm, but it also had breaks moments where it felt like she was holding back tears. She didn't know what she was playing. She just let it out. Victor listened, eyes closed. The assistants forgot to blink. Even the camera, quietly recording, captured a moment that would later move millions. When she finished, no one clapped. No one moved. Victor finally opened his eyes. "Now," he said, "you are not just a fighter. You are an artist." Ronda looked down, unsure what to say. She had never been called that before. In the following days, Victor helped her build on that melody. Together, they added structure, refined the notes, and shaped it into a real composition. It became something powerful, a piece that told her. Story without words. One day, Victor had a strange request. "You will perform this," he said. "Perform?" Ronda asked. "In front of people?" "Yes, just a few. A test." She felt nervous, but she agreed. They arranged a small private concert in the studio. Victor invited a few close friends, fellow musicians, critics, and even a producer. Ronda didn't know most of them, but she recognized the pressure in their eyes. She sat at the piano, her hands sweating. But she remembered Victor's words. "Don't think, just feel." The room went silent. People cried. Some were stunned. When she finished, the room slowly filled with applause. Not loud, not fake, just honest, quiet admiration. Victor stood and clapped once. "Well done," he said. After that performance, something changed again. Ronda wasn't just a student anymore. She had become something else, a storyteller through sound. And Victor, the cold master, had become something close to a mentor. Maybe even a friend. Neither of them had expected this. It had started as a joke, a challenge, maybe even a trap. But now, they were both part of something bigger. Music had done what fights, titles, and fame never could. It had brought out the soul. The piano room was quiet. Too quiet. It was the kind of silence that felt full, not empty. Every day for the past 2 weeks, Ronda Rousey had been coming into Victor Lauren's private studio. And every day something new was waking up inside. Her, it was no longer just about lessons or piano keys. It was about something she couldn't name, something deeper than she had ever felt in a fight. It was like discovering a part of herself that had been asleep for years. Victor noticed it too. He was no longer just a teacher giving instructions. He had started really listening to the way she played, the way her fingers moved across the keys, and the emotions hiding behind each note. He didn't speak much during lessons anymore, just stood nearby with his arms folded, his sharp eyes following every movement. But his face looked different now, softer, curious, sometimes even proud. One cloudy afternoon, Victor asked her, a question he had never asked before. "Do you remember the first time you heard a piano?" Ronda looked up from the keys. Her fingers froze. No one had asked her that in years. She took a deep breath. "Yeah, I do." She didn't say more, but her eyes drifted away, as if searching for a memory lost in the past. She was about 7 years old. Her dad had taken her to a music shop, one of those old, dusty places that smelled like wood and books. He wasn't rich, but he loved music. He had sat down at one of the pianos and played something simple, soft, and beautiful. Ronda had stood there holding his hand, not knowing what the song was, but feeling something in her chest. That was the first time music had made her feel small in a good way. She didn't talk about her dad much. After his death, she buried everything connected to Jim, including the music. She turned her pain into training, her sadness into strength. She became a fighter. She built walls. But now, in Victor's piano room, those walls were cracking. That day, Victor didn't give her any sheet music. He simply said, "Close your eyes. Play something that hurts." Ronda didn't argue. She sat quietly, placed her fingers on the keys, and closed her eyes. And then, slowly, she started to play. The melody wasn't smooth or perfect. It stumbled, rose, and fell like waves. But it had weight. Each note felt like it was pulled from a heavy place. Her hands moved without thought, guided by memory and feeling. She didn't know where it came from. It just came. Victor didn't move. He stood frozen, his eyes fixed on her. The assistants at the back, who were usually checking their phones or whispering quietly, now stood still too. Everyone listened. And in that room, filled with old pianos and dusty history, Ronda's music filled every corner like light pushing out darkness. When she finished, there was no applause. It's just silence. Victor finally spoke. "That is not beginner's music. That is truth." Ronda looked at him, surprised. "I didn't even know what I was doing, but you felt it," he said. "That is more than many can do." After that, something shifted between them. Victor began treating her differently, gave her more freedom, allowed her to experiment. He even began calling her by her first name, not just you. One day, Victor came into the room carrying an old leather-bound notebook. He placed it on the piano and opened it. "This is my personal collection," he said. "Compositions I never showed the world." Ronda looked at the pages. Handwritten notes, strange symbols, half-finished songs. She was shocked. Victor never shared his private work with anyone. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because I think you may help me finish one." Ronda blinked. "You want me to help you?" Victor nodded. "Yes, you see music differently, you feel it. Not with theory, but with instinct. Maybe that is what this piece needs." Spent the next week working on that unfinished song. Ronda would play a section, then suggest a change. Victor would argue, then try it, then nod in agreement. It was like they were building a bridge between two worlds, his world of discipline and structure, her world of emotion and instinct. The more they worked, the more Ronda started believing that maybe she belonged in this room, not just as a guest, but as a real musician. She never thought she would feel that way. But now, every time she touched the keys, she felt like she was telling a story no one else could tell. One day, while they were finishing the final bars of the song, Victor looked at her and said something unexpected. "You must perform this." Ronda froze. "Perform again?" "Yes, but this time, for the public." Ronda laughed nervously. "I'm not a concert pianist. I'm not ready." "You are more ready than you think," he said. "And the world needs to hear this." The idea terrified her. She could walk into an octagon and fight another champion without blinking. But the thought of sitting in front of a crowd, playing music that came from her heart, was scarier than any opponent. "I don't know," she said. Victor stepped closer. "You once told me music was your father's gift. This piece, it is your way of speaking to him." That hit her like a punch. She looked down at the keys. She didn't answer right away. But in her heart, she already knew the answer. The next few days were different. The room wasn't just a classroom any. Marit became a stage. Victor brought in better sound equipment. He invited a small group of guests to come listen, a few trusted friends, some musicians, and one music critic who worked for a big newspaper. Ronda practiced every day, not just the notes, but her breathing, her posture, her focus. She wasn't just playing anymore. She was preparing for war, the same way she did before a fight. But this time, her weapon was emotion. On the night of the performance, the room looked different. Candles lit the corners, casting soft shadows on the walls. The audience sat quietly in chairs, waiting. Victor stood by the piano, dressed in his usual black, calm, and serious. Ronda walked in slowly. She wore a simple black dress, no flashy makeup, just a strong expression. Her hands were cold. Her heart was racing. She sat at the piano. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She thought about her father. She thought about pain. She thought about healing. And then she played the melody. Began soft, like a whisper. Her fingers danced gently, carefully. But as the music grew, so did her power. The piece rose into something deep and beautiful. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. The audience sat in stunned silence. Some closed their eyes. Some had tears running down their cheeks. The music reached into them, pulled at something they didn't know was there. It wasn't just sound. It was a story without words. When the last note faded, the room stayed quiet. No one moved. Then slowly, applause began. It's not loud, not forced, but honest. Victor stepped forward. He didn't speak much, but this time he did. This is what music is for. This is what it means to feel. Ronda stood, her face calm, but her eyes glassy. She nodded to the audience, then walked out quietly. Later that night, Victor handed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for reminding me why I started." It was signed -V.L. Ronda smiled. She had come into the studio as a joke, a fighter trying to survive a piano lesson. But now, she had become something else. Not because she played well, but because she played honestly. The next morning, videos of the performance were leaked. Online, no one knew who recorded it, but the video showed her playing the song with her eyes closed, camera slowly zooming in on her face and her fingers. The internet exploded. People shared it everywhere. Headlines said, "Ronda Rousey's hidden talent shocks the music world." Some thought it was fake. Some thought it was a stunt. But most felt it. They didn't care about the story. They just knew the music was real. Comments flooded in. "Didn't know she had this in her?" I cried. "I don't even know why. This is more powerful than any fight." Within 48 hours, the video had millions of views. Ronda's fans grew beyond sports. Now people who never watched MMA or WWE were talking about her, not as a fighter, but as a musician. Victor refused interviews. He didn't want the attention. But privately, he told Ronda, this is only the beginning. And he was right, because now she wasn't just someone who could fight battles. She was someone who could heal people too, with music. Ronda Rousey sat on the steps outside Victor Lauren's music studio with her phone in her hand, watching the same video for the 5th time that morning. It was the performance, the one that had changed everything. Her fingers moved over the piano keys like magic in that video. Her eyes had been closed, but her heart had been open. Millions of people had seen it now. The internet had taken something deeply personal and turned it into something huge. Bigger than she ever expected, the comments kept pouring in. People from all over the world were reacting with love, shock, and admiration. Some were fans who had followed her career for years. Others were strangers who didn't even know who she was until now. They all had something to say. I watched this with my mother, and we both cried. I'm a pianist, and I felt every single note. She's not just a fighter, she's an artist. This is pure emotion. Ronda couldn't believe it. Was laughing at a piano joke in a fancy ballroom. Now people were calling her a symbol of emotional strength. She felt proud, but she also felt exposed. Music had always been private for her. It was something buried deep in her childhood, something that reminded her of her father. She never expected to share that part of herself with the world. Yet here it was, public, viral, unstoppable. She stood up and walked back into the studio. Victor was already there, as usual, sipping tea and going through some notes. He glanced at her without looking up fully. Still watching the video? He asked. She nodded. I didn't expect this. No one expected it, he said calmly. That's why it worked. She sat at the piano and placed her fingers gently on the keys. I thought it would just be a small performance for a few people. Now it's everywhere, 'cause it was honest, Victor said. And the world is starving for honesty. They sat in silence for a while. Then he turned to her. You've touched something most musicians try their whole lives to reach, not just skill, but soul. Ronda looked up at him. So what now? Victor gave a small smile, one of the rare ones. Now you use it. She blinked. Use it? How? You have power, he said, and not the kind that breaks bones. The kind that heals hearts. That line stuck with her all day. Later that evening, her phone rang. Excited. Breathless. Ronda, you're not going to believe this. We've gotten offers, concerts, collaborations, even a documentary deal. Ronda was shocked. Concerts. Big names, too. They want you to perform your piece, maybe even more if you're willing to write something new. Everyone wants to hear more from the fighter with the broken melody, said, quoting a phrase from one of the online articles. Ronda didn't answer right away. She was still trying to understand how quickly things were changing. The next few days were filled with interviews and public attention. Everyone wanted to know how a tough, famous fighter like her had played something so soft, so emotional. She was invited to talk shows, podcasts, and even a live radio event where she was asked to play a short piece on air. She felt overwhelmed. Not because she couldn't handle the pressure she'd fought in front of stadiums full of screaming fans, but because this was different. This wasn't about strength. This was about feeling. And feelings were harder to control than punches. She called Victor one evening, her voice tired. I don't know if I'm ready for all this. You're already doing it, he replied, but be careful. The world will try to turn your heart into a product. Protect it. That advice stayed with her. A few weeks later, Victor surprised her with another idea. I want to host a public recital, he said. You will be the featured performer. Ronda's eyes widened. You want me to be the main act? Me? You are ready, he said firmly. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. It would be a big event. Hundreds of guests, music lovers, critics, even young students from music schools. Victor had never organized something like this for anyone before. It was a bold move. But he believed in her, so she agreed. The days leading up to the concert were intense. Ronda practiced for hours, worked with Victor on final touches, and tried to stay calm, even when her anxiety crept in. She wasn't afraid of the piano, but she was afraid of letting people into her soul again. Then came the night of the performance. The theater was full. People whispered as they waited, curious to see what Ronda would do this time. Was it a fluke? Or was she truly something new? Backstage, Ronda stood in front of a mirror, wearing a simple white blouse and black pants. No costume, no act. Just herself. She stared at her reflection, her hands trembling slightly. Victor came in, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said softly, You don't need to prove anything. Just share. She nodded, took a deep breath, and walked toward the stage. The lights dimmed. The audience grew quiet. She sat at the grand piano facing the crowd. She looked out and saw faces, strangers, fans, music lovers, students. Her mother was in the front row. She smiled. That gave Ronda strength. Then she began to play. The piece started softly, just like before. But this time, it had something new. Confidence. Depth. Her fingers flowed with purpose. Every note had weight. Every pause had meaning. The music told her story, pain, love, loss, memory, healing. Midway through the song, something amazing happened. The crowd was completely still. You could hear people breathing. Some were crying quietly. Others closed their eyes, letting the music take them somewhere else. Ronda felt something shift inside her too. She wasn't just playing the piano. She was releasing something she had held inside for years. When the final note rang out, the silence lasted for a few seconds. Then the room exploded into applause. Standing ovation, cheering. Even Victor stood and clapped, his face serious, but his eyes shining. After the performance, people lined up to meet her. Some were music students. Others were fans who had never been to a classical concert before. A young girl approached her with teary eyes. My dad passed away last year. Your music made me feel like he was hugging me again. Ronda knelt down and hugged the girl. She didn't know what to say. Words weren't enough sometimes. That night as she left the theater, Ronda felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, not victory, not relief, but peace. In the days that followed, the recital went viral too. News outlets praised her honesty. Musicians talked about her natural feel for emotion. She became a symbol of how people can be more than one thing, fighter and a feeler. Tough and tender. Victor's studio received hundreds of letters. Some from children, some from veterans, some from people who had lost family. All of them talked about how her music made them feel something they hadn't felt in years. Ronda read. Every single one. Then one day, she had an idea. She called Victor. What if we create something together, a program for kids? For anyone who's gone through something hard. He was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, "Go on." A place where music and movement come together, she explained. Where you don't have to be perfect, you just have to show up, learn the piano, learn martial arts, learn how to express pain in healthy ways. Victor was quiet again, and he said the words she never thought she'd hear from him. Love it. And so they began working on it. A music and emotional strength program for kids with trauma. For people who had gone through tough times and didn't know how to express it, they called it the healing key. It started small, few students, a rented space, single piano. But soon, the word spread. More people joined. Victor taught piano. Ronda taught martial arts and discipline. And together, they helped kids find strength not just in their bodies, but in their hearts. One day during a class, a small boy who hadn't spoken for weeks sat at the piano and played a few soft notes. Victor watched. Ronda knelt beside him and whispered, "That's it, just like that." The boy smiled. In that moment, Ronda realized something powerful. Fame, fights, concerts, none of it compared to this. This was the real win, and it all began with one strange invitation from a cold pianist who challenged her to sit at the piano now. She'd become more than just a champion. She'd become a voice for every silent heart waiting to be heard. The sky was soft gray the morning Ronda Rousey walked into the new building. It was not a stadium, not a fighting ring, and not a concert hall. It was a large, peaceful space with two wide rooms, one filled with pianos and music sheets, the other covered in soft mats for movement and self-defense training. There were mirrors on one wall, large windows letting in sunlight, and a quiet energy in the air that felt different from any place she had ever been. This was the healing Keitha place she and Victor Lorne had built from a strange friendship, shared past, and a belief that music and movement could change lives. It had been 6 months since her viral piano performance. In that time, her life had shifted completely. Offers for concerts and interviews kept coming. She received awards from music foundations, got invited to perform on international stages, and was even named one of the most inspiring artists of the year. But instead of chasing the spotlight, she had quietly stepped back and focused on something deeper. She had realized something important. Fame felt good, but helping others heal felt better. And that's why she poured all her energy, time, and even money into building this space. Victor, despite being known for his cold, private nature, had surprised everyone by agreeing to be part of it. He now visited 3 times a week, teaching music in ways only he could, strict but soulful, demanding but kind beneath the surface. On that day, Ronda looked around the space and smiled. The kids were arriving, each one different. Some were shy, some were angry. Some had scars on their skin, in their hearts, or both. But all of them had one thing in common. They were carrying something heavy inside, and they didn't know how to let it go. That's what the healing key was for. In the music room, Victor was already seated at a piano. A few students sat on benches looking nervous. One boy refused to touch the keys. Another girl pressed too hard, like she was hitting a punching bag. Victor didn't get angry, just said softly, "We will try again tomorrow." Music is patient. In the other room, Ronda led the movement session. She showed them how to stretch, how to breathe, how to focus. It wasn't about kicking or fighting, it was about control. You don't have to punch, she told them. You have to listen to your body, your breath, your feelings. After class, a teenage boy named Malik stayed behind. He had a strong body, but quiet eyes. He didn't speak much. But that day, he looked at Rhonda and said, "I remember the video. You were crying a little while playing. I felt it." Rhonda nodded. "Yeah, I was. I missed someone, my brother," Malik said, his voice tight. "He's gone." About it, but nothing came out. "Then try music," she said. "Or movement, or both. We don't always have to speak. We just have to let it out." That night, she sat alone at the piano after everyone had gone home. The room was dark, except for the moonlight pouring through the window. She placed her hands on the keys and started playing a soft tune, nothing written, just feeling. She didn't know Victor was standing at the door, watching her. When she stopped, he walked in and sat beside her. "You've grown," he said quietly, "but not only in music, in heart." Rhonda smiled. "You think my tempo's finally acceptable?" He chuckled, rare warm sound. "Still sloppy." They both laughed. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. "I have something for you," he said. She opened it and found an old golden metronome, worn out, but still working. "This belonged to my first teacher," Victor said. "He gave it to me when I learned to play with both my hands and my soul." Rhonda held the metronome carefully. "Why give it to me?" "'Cause you've done something I never could. You turned music into medicine." Her eyes softened. "We did it together." He nodded. "But only you could reach them." This way, in the following weeks, the program began to grow. Parents started calling in. Social workers brought kids who had suffered from bullying, abuse, and loss. One girl had lost her mother and hadn't spoken in months. But after 2 weeks of silent piano sessions, she began to hum a tune during class. Another boy who used to punch walls when angry learned to press keys instead and slowly. The anger faded. One day a woman came into the studio with her son who had a physical disability. His legs didn't work the same as others. He couldn't join sports or run with other kids. She had tried everything, but he never smiled, not once. Rhonda invited him to sit beside her at the piano. "Do you like music?" she asked. He shrugged. She played a simple, fun tune, something light and bouncy. His head bobbed slightly. "Want to try?" He touched the keys with one finger, then another. By the end of the week, he was playing two-handed melodies, slow but happy. His mother cried during every session. "I haven't seen him this alive in years." She whispered, "The program didn't just help kids, it helped adults." Too, some parents joined in, sitting at the back, watching, listening. Some started coming to evening classes. Victor even hosted a few group music therapy sessions for veterans and people suffering from PTSD, his cold. Distant shells seemed to melt in this place. Maybe Rhonda had healed something in him too. One afternoon, Victor sat Rhonda down and showed her a new piece he had composed. It was titled, She recognized some of the melodies. It was inspired by the first tune she ever played for him. "It's beautiful," she said, almost in tears. "It's your story," he said, "and mine, but it belongs to them now, to the children, to everyone who thinks they're broken." As the seasons changed, so did the reach of the healing key. News stations covered it. Documentaries were filmed. Celebrities visited quietly, some even bringing their own children to learn. But Rhonda didn't let the spotlight distract her this time. She kept the focus on the mission, healing through honesty. One night, she sat by the window, looking out at the city. The lights blinked in the distance, but she felt calm. She picked up a letter from her father's old box, something she had. Kept hidden for years, it was handwritten. "You're going to be something special, Peanut, not because you fight hard, but because you feel deeply. That's your real strength. Never hide it." She smiled. Her fingers itched. She sat at the piano again and began writing a new piece. Not for the world, not for a concert, just for her father. And for herself, it was soft, full of pauses. It had sadness, but also light. It didn't shout, it whispered. It was about pain, but it was also about peace. The next morning, Rhonda opened the studio earlier than usual. She lit a small candle, placed the golden metronome beside the piano, and pinned her father's letter on the wall behind it as the children walked in. One by one, she greeted them with a warm smile. Not the tough fighter's grin, not the public figure's practiced smile, but a real one. They had no idea how broken she had once been, but now she was whole, and through her. So many others were learning how to become whole too, not with punches, not with shouting, but with music, movement, and the quiet courage to feel.